Railway history. Unfortunately, much of our railway history is gone and forgotten, but parts of it exist around us in museums and displays. Sometimes it is in plain sight if you know where to look, or off the beaten track. In this series, I will discuss various railway historical events in an effort to help keep our railway history alive. On November 14th, I had the privilege of tagging along with the Canadian Railway Historical Association, the Niagara Division, on a field trip. And it was headed up by the CRHA. And my brother, who's a member, was the one who got me the invite. And this picture here is of particular interest. We'll get to it much later in the video. But we saw some very interesting things and aspects of things that are long gone, such as the Niagara Falls Parks and River Railroad, which is also linked to the Great Gorge Route, Michigan Central Railway, parts of CN, and the Hydro Railway, which at one time was the largest railway in Canada. So let's jump right in. The first stop, which I'm showing on Google Maps here, is near the intersection of Mountain Road and Dorchester. So basically, on the north side is a place called Fireman's Park, which you can see where I've circled it here. And that is where the Hydro Railway took all the debris when they were digging out the first hydro canal, which is you can still see today. It's an open canal. It's not underground. And they had to take all that debris and put it somewhere. So where'd they put it? Well, they brought it along on the railway, and they crossed basically Mountain Road here, and they dumped it at the edge of the escarpment to create almost like a little bit of a blob or blip out of the escarpment. Now the neat thing is, if you look at the next, I've also circled the next shot here, as you can see that today there's a walking path called the Hollage Road Recreation Trail. Now you're asking me, why is it called the Hollage Road? Well, when they made the second hydro canal, which is underground, they used trucks. The railway was no longer there, and they used the same right-of-way, which then became a road, to dump the same type of debris in the same area again. Here's a snapshot I took of the park, what it looks like today. And the telephone poles are about where one of the tracks, it was a 2 or 3 track dumping yard basically. And that's where the track fall was, that line of poles. I also included a pic here of one of the typical trains that ran on the Hydro Railway, and they were electric mostly. There was some steam as well. And in this case, you can see the dump cars that were used. Now, this is not that location. This is where they were being loaded of the debris, probably further down the line. The second stop was at Portage Road, which today is a overpass over top of the CN, or the Canadian National Railway. Now, the Michigan Central Division of the New York Central used to run parallel to that, as you can see with the red line paralleling the CN, and also the curve was a spur off to a sand pit. Now, CN also had a spur which went off, and it curved off to the Queenston Quarry spur. The neat thing is, if you look at the property line there, those apartments, you can see that that property still curves today. I also included a picture I took today, but really all you can see is the CN railway. There's really almost no remains of the other right-of-ways there, or very little evidence, unless you really go traipsing through the bushes. The next stop is at where they had their main yard, which they called Whirlpool Yard. So basically the line came from that dumping area that I showed in the first stop, along what is today Swayze Drive. It basically parallels the old right-of-way until it does that funny curve down there. You can also kind of see the CN line there. There's a Y, and you can see the lines crossing the road and crossing Stanley Avenue. Just on the other side of Stanley Avenue is where the yard was, but you can see where I've drawn in the line where it came in from the dumping area. There was a Y which joined it up with the line that paralleled the hydro canal, as that's what they were excavating at the time. And then the yard was just up along kind of parallel to Stanley Avenue there. I've also included a picture I've got off one of the websites I found of some engines waiting for water at the hydro, or I should say the Hydro Railway Whirlpool Yard. Stop 4 is beside Whirlpool Road at the old hydro canal, which is the first hydro canal. So look in here, a couple things that you can see. And first off, I'll draw it again. There's the one leg of the Y of the Whirlpool Railway going off, as you can see in red there. And then, of course, it went the other way as well, the parallel up and down the hydro canal. So in the next shot, I've got here, this is actually a picture of the Canadian National, which originally was the Grand Trunk Railway bridge over the hydro canal, which is still an amazing bridge. And then the next shot, you can see the right of way, and you can still see the underpass, or where the hydro railway went underneath the CNR, and now today it's just the walking and bicycle path. Although we didn't mosey on further down along the right of way, there's a couple more things of interest that you might be interested in seeing yourself. There's two abandoned bridges, railway bridges actually, further down. The next one down is the abandoned Michigan Central Bridge over the hydro canal. And then if you continue on past Thorold Stone Road is the abandoned NS&T, or Niagara, St. Catharines and Toronto Railway Bridge. Stop 5 is at the Spanish Aero Car, which is right across the street basically from the Great Wolf Lodge, which if you got kids, it's a great place to go. But anyway, that's besides the point. At this point, the Niagara Falls Parks and River Railroad ran along the edge here, and they had a car barn right across the street from where the Spanish Aero Car is today. And I've got a picture here. You can see a bunch of trees in a very flat area. And then in the picture here, archive picture, you can see this is actually from the opposite end, but that's the small car barn and some streetcars in the picture. The station is basically where this building by the Spanish Aero Car is today. That's where the station used to be located. But this is, unfortunately, it's kind of a replica, but I don't believe it's the original station. Stop 6 is one of interest. So basically, as you're driving along the Niagara River Parkway here, with the golf course on your left and the Niagara River on your right, or vice versa, depending on what direction you're going, there's a slight dip, but you would never know that there was quite a big ravine here. And at one time, the Niagara Falls Parks and River Railway went over a large trestle, and it was known as Bowman's Ravine Bridge. Here's a snapshot of it here. And then when we visited, I took a couple pictures. You can see the right-of-way, which is now a pathway. And the abutments for the bridge are still visible, barely. And I got a picture of one here as well. The next stop is actually on the other side of the Whirlpool and the other end of the Spanish Aero Car. Now, when you look across, you think that you're looking across the borders of the United States. But in fact, because of the Whirlpool and the weird angle of the Niagara River at that point, you're just looking from Canada to Canada, and the United States is clearly visible as well on the other side of the actual river, not the Whirlpool. Moving along here, so the other part of this electric railway along here was the Great Gorge Route, which was the U.S. side. It ran right along the river, right down at the bottom of the ravine, and it ran, I believe, until the early 1930s, but due to many rock falls and such, they eventually had to close it down. And today, as in the pictures you can see that I've got, it's really difficult to tell where the right-of-way was. It's just kind of a loose footpath down there now. And here is a photo as well that I found, and of one of the streetcars traveling along the Great Gorge route. The next stop was really just a quick bathroom break for everybody in this long drive. But actually, in fact, the place where we stopped is actually the old train station known as the Niagara Glen Station. Now, today, you can still go there, and it's known as the Niagara Glen Nature Center, and as a gift shop and stuff. But it actually is the original train station. Stop 8 is at the Sir Adam Beck Powerhouse, and it's a very impressive, huge hydro project. Now, from being on the Canadian side, you really can't see too much of it. You know, you drive right over top of the dam on the road. But if you look across the river, you can see the U.S. project, equally as impressive, which is the Robert Moses hydro project. And I'll get more into the Adam Beck in a minute because there's a little bit of a railway thing here. Unfortunately, you can't see it, but I'll get to that in a minute. But if you see the picture I've got here, you can see across the river, you can barely see a rock. Well, actually, that's quite a large rock, and I'll zoom in to this next shot here so you can see how big it really is. And you get an idea of a big obstacle. And that rock was there when the Great Gorge Route was running. And here's a picture of one of the streetcars going right past that very rock. So that's kind of cool. Getting back to Sir Adam Beck Powerhouse, they actually had their own little railway, Powerhouse Railway, that ran from the bottom of the dam and along the river, actually down to Queenston, down to the docks. And we'll be heading there in a bit. That is one of the stops. Moving right along, we didn't actually stop at Queenston Heights, but it's a very significant part along the Niagara Falls Parks and River Railroad. Right at the foot of the steps now, where you can walk up towards Brock's Monument, and you can still see the bicycle path along here. That's where the Queenston station was. And then, as you can see on the map here, I circled it in blue where the station was roughly, and then the red line follows the right-of-way, which is now a path. And you can see that almost hairpin corner. It's also quite a steep hill because you're going down the escarpment. And then one year there was a very bad, tragic accident along that spot, and a number of people in that were killed. I think the brakes failed, and I believe the car was also overloaded. So it was kind of the perfect storm for a disaster. Unfortunately, people did die on that, and very sad. The line then after that continued on down to the Queenston Docks, which I mentioned earlier, which was also the destination of that hydro line, railway line. Of a point of interest, the Queenston station still exists today. It is now up at the Niagara Park School of Horticulture, and I believe it serves as a lecture hall now, but the station still does exist. Now, stop number 9 is probably my favorite stop on the whole trip. I really found this one the most interesting. It was quite amazing what is still there. Not much there, but still in itself is pretty neat. So in order to find it, you have to park on York Street. So you go down the bottom of the escarpment, and you can see the red line there. So you park on York Street, and then you walk down, and the street basically turns into a path, and you walk all the way down the river. And when you get down there, that's where the old Lewiston-Queenston Bridge used to cross the Niagara River. And it was there until 1962. And after that, it was replaced by the current Queenston-Lewiston Bridge, which is above the escarpment and much higher up, of course. So this bridge originally was used mainly for the crossing of the streetcars for the Niagara Falls Parks and Rec, which became, when it went across the border, it was the Niagara Gorge route. There's some pictures here I have, I'll get to in a minute. But so the neat thing is that you can still find the remains of the abutment on the Canadian side with the date stamp on it when it was built, which is really neat. So here's the pictures I took. The first one is the abutment on the Canadian side, looking up to the top part of it. And looking down at the bottom, there's the date stamp, 1899. And then the next shot is the rails that are still there, curving to enter onto the bridge. It looks like that wall may have been put there after the fact. And then the final shot is across the river to the U.S. side. And that's the abutment on the U.S. side with interesting sculpture at Art in the Park. So stop 10, we are now at the Queenston Docks, as I've circled here on Google Maps. Today it's still a somewhat busy place. There's some ships come in there, like cargo and that, but also it's where you get on if you want to go on the jet boat to the Whirlpool Rapids. So still has some functionality. So I'm looking at some older pictures here. We've got some interesting things. So basically the first pic is bunch of track with not much sitting there, but basically this area was shared by 3 railways. So you've got the Niagara Falls Parks River Railroad, which also was partnered with the international line that went across the bridge. And then you've got the hydro railway that I mentioned earlier, the one that comes down from the down from the Adam Beck site. it came down, terminated down here at the dock. And last but not least, the Michigan Central Railway came in here as well. So 3 railways serviced this port for various reasons. Most of them, a lot of it was passenger service, I believe, especially obviously the streetcars. The Hydro would have been freight. And I'm not sure Michigan Central would have been definitely some passenger, but there might have been some freight there as well. Our next stop is on Queenston Street in Queenston. And we stopped near a bridge, and the bridge doesn't really seem to go over anything except for a ravine. Well, that used to be a spot where the Michigan Central used to go underneath that bridge. And you can see the circle on the map there. And then what I did after that is I marked in red. The line coming up from the Queenston docks is at first, it's a combination of Michigan Central and Niagara Falls Parks and River Railroad. And then it gets to a point where it's just the Michigan Central that goes underneath the bridge. The next shot shows where the Parks streetcar line actually curved up and headed up towards that steep hill I mentioned earlier, going up the escarpment up to Queenston Heights. I did take a couple pictures, but as you've seen here, the area is very overgrown. There's really not much you can see. In that of the old right-of-way or anything. But it is interesting that there's basically a bridge over, not nothing, but just a dip. Now for Lucky 13, which ended up being our final stop. Due to muddy weather and that, we didn't do the next one. But so basically, this is where the St. David's station was on the Michigan Central. And basically, based on the population, I would figure it's really more of a maintenance of way station. Maybe there was an operator here or something like that. But really, there wouldn't have been any passengers to speak of using this spot. So as you can see on the map, you can see where it was located. You can see Concession 2 Road here coming in. It's along York Road, which is Old Highway number 8, if you're familiar with the area. And the red line shows the right-of-way, which is now part of the Bruce Trail, I believe. Or at that point, I'm not sure. I think the Bruce Trail heads up and ends at Queenston, actually. So it crosses over York Road. Now, this has been all redone and regraded. But on the one side, we can kind of see a black line I drew there. The abutment is still there for where the bridge was on that side. On this side, and you'll see in a picture coming up, that's where the train station was. And then the line went on towards both down to Niagara on the Lake, and then also the line down to the docks that we mentioned earlier. So yeah, and then there's the 3 shots I took of the area. There's one of the parking lot. You can see these are the entourage we had that day. Quite a few people came out. And that parking lot is basically around where the train station was, and that's the right of way heading off in that direction towards, as I mentioned, Niagara on the Lake and to the docks. Also, looking the other way, you can see how maybe the landscape's changed a bit, but in the far distance, you can see the bridge abutment, and in the final shot, you can see the bridge abutment up close. So that's basically about it for this. Hope you enjoyed this. There's actually another YouTuber who was on this tour. Her name is Traveling Lady Railfan, and I'll put a link to her video at the end here if you want to check it out, because she had it from a bit of a different perspective, and her video is quite good as well if you want to see it. And I believe she may have some other historical pictures I wasn't able to get my hands on. So have a look at that, and if you enjoyed this, please click the like button, and if you liked even more, please subscribe. Thank you. Thank you for watching an episode on railway history. If you have any aspects of railway history that you're curious about, feel free to reach out to me with your suggestions or questions. Also, if you like this video and are interested in seeing more historical content, please subscribe to my channel.